Hello, everyone. This is Roll Anders K3RA, and welcome to the May 1st, 2025 operating class presentation. We have two presentations tonight, which are kind of closely related. Um, First, we have my friend Dan Zeitlin, K2YWE, who will be talking about contesting. And if you're never contested, this is a good introduction. And if you've been contesting, this will give you some um reminders and some new ideas. And if you're a pretty advanced contester, then I know that you'll enjoy it because you just like talking about and listening to contesting. So that's our first presentation, and that's the longer of the two. The second presentation will be about logging software, um, telling you what's out there, and to be honest, trying to sell you on the idea of getting a program if you don't have one. So uh, I guess I should introduce Dan a little bit. Dan is a member of the Potomac Valley Radio Club, longtime contester, good friend of mine, avid CW operator, will do phone, will not do FT8. uh, that's his choice right now. But he's an excellent operator. He has a very competitive station, despite being on a very small lot. He's if you got points per acre, he would win every contest, I think. So he really does a great job. He has a good location, but it's not room for multiple huge towers or anything like that. So he can give you the view from all sides. He's also operated with W3LPO on many of the big contest operations, multi-operators. So he knows the other side of it too. So with that, let me introduce Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. By the way, I have done FT8.
You
I
have,
just,
I know, but
I have done, and I had to, of course, try it, but it's not my mode of choice at the moment. Well, let me fire up this. I was trying to get this ready before. I wasn't quite sure what. Whoops, wrong one. Wasn't quite sure what we would be doing here. So let me find it. I apologize for this fumbling around here. That's absurd. I just had it. I just had this up. You know, let's do it a different way here. Uh, okay, and I suppose I have to share this now.
yes.
Whoops. But I've wiped out my screen, so I have to share it first, I suppose. Let's see here. Shares at the bottom, and I'll do it on screen two, I guess.
There you go.
Yep, we see you. That's good.
You see it?
You're
Okay, I'm,
not
I'm
you're
partway
not
there
in
then.
presentation mode, but
And then I do concurrent slide, and that should work, huh?
you can if you
Okay.
go to presentation mode, it'll be a little bigger, but maybe you can't.
Um, I'm not sure which one you're looking at right now.
I'm just saying. Now I'm seeing you. No, that's the wrong screen. But I just wondered if you could get to full screen mode with your presentation to see
Yeah,
the window.
when I tried this before, it was full screen, and I don't know if I've got the wrong window for this or what I'm doing here.
Right now you gotta.
Um,
Okay, go ahead. You'll work it out there. We'll wait a second. The
uh,
latecomers a chance to show up here. Right now we see your Alpine
oh, is
wallpaper.
that what you're seeing? I
Yeah.
need to share differently then, and I don't know how to get to that tool. Oh, at the top, I guess it is. Stop sharing, or you are screen sharing. Uh, oh, I see. I'm seeing the wrong screen. So if I go to share, now I can share screen number one. I think that's going to get you what I want. Okay, this
There you go.
this
That's
presentation, this
Yep.
this
You're
was
good now.
original.
Perfect.
Okay, this was originally put together in this 4x3 format, and translating everything to 16:9 just proved to be too much of a bother. So I apologize for not filling up your entire screen. But I think we're good with this, right? So contesting is, is but one of the many facets of amateur radio that you're smart enough to join this series to learn about, and it's just one of the many nooks. But one of the things that I think is almost unique to contesting is that it intersects, it touches pretty much all the other aspects of ham radio. It's all the things that you see listed on the screen are in some way associated with contesting. And what you see there, you see modes and frequencies and all kinds of different kind of operations, equipment. All that stuff's involved in contesting. So it's pretty cool in that respect. It also gives a lot of depth. When you start to associate with contesters, you will find a lot of depth of understanding in a whole bunch of different topics, which is nice. Contesting also tends to adopt new technology and push it forward, as well as operator skills, all in the quest of getting better scores and doing better in a contest. And through the presentation, you'll probably hopefully you'll get an appreciation of why that is. So what's the contest? And how do they work? And all this stuff is what we're going to talk about. Contest is an event that's got some time limit associated with it, where you try to make as many QSOs as you can. And by making those QSOs, you score points. And the QSOs have to have a prescribed content to them, and it has to be a two-way exchange, and it has to be accurate. So the contest sponsor will tell you what that is. Sometimes it's as simple as your location, sometimes it's more than that. And your points can change with where you are. If you make a contact with somebody on another continent in a particular contest, that might be worth more points than making a contest with somebody in your own continent. So points vary, but we call whatever points you accumulate by making the QSO, those are point QSOs. And you can see in this little chart down here, these QSOs clearly are not all worth the same number of points, because if you did the math there, you'd see it's some goofy number like an average of 2.5 or something like that. The score in contests is almost always composed of two pieces: those QSO points that you earn by making contacts, and something called multipliers that are associated with the stations that you work. And your score is the product of those two things. So very often the multiplier is based on location. You might get a multiplier every time you work in a new country. If I work Germany twice, I don't necessarily get two multipliers. I only get one, because for the first time I worked it. But it might be that if I work, I was also getting a multiplier for the zone that somebody's in, I could get more than one multiplier. So you see here, there's the points for the QSOs, and there's the points for the multiplier. In this particular contest that I pull this score sheet from, WPX, you get a multiplier for every unique prefix that you work. Well, you can imagine there's a gazillion of those things. KC3, KD1, W this, K that, and all the foreign exchanges and all the different permutations of that first prefix. So this happens to be a contest where the multipliers go nuts. And you can see by the scores what, how that builds very, very quickly. So as I said before, one contact might provide you both QSO points and mults. In this case, if I worked somebody with a prefix that I hadn't worked before, I'd get the points for making a QSO with them, but I would also get a multiplier for having worked yet another unique, to me, first time prefix. And that might be for every time I work that prefix on a different band, or that multiplier on a different band. Or the contest authority may say, no, you only get it once and that's it, which is the case in the prefix contest. All of this gets very complicated in terms of the math, but you don't have to worry about that because the sponsor is going to do it. So all you have to do is submit your your score, your log, and the contest sponsor will compute what your score is. Later on, we'll see that logging programs, contest programs, do that for you too, and for the most part, they're pretty accurate. But they're not going to be able to discern which ones you didn't do right and which ones you did right. So there's always going to be a little bit of a discrepancy. How do you find out when there's a contest and what the rules are and all that? There are resources out there, contest calendars. The most popular one that I know of is WA7BNM. And I guess it's on the other screen. And I think with the danger of making this a mess, I'm going to try to change the screen I'm sharing right now. Okay, I think I did it.
Yeah.
So are you seeing the WA7BNM screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to, unfortunately, that banner is in the way. Here we go. Okay, so that's what it looks like.
Everything looks good
And
here.
you'll, excuse me?
Everything looks good here. The banner's not in the way.
Okay, yeah, no, it's just in my way. So you can see the calendar along the top. You got a lot of choices about what you want to look at. You can look at you can look at a whole year. There's even a perpetual one. And state QSO parties, which are one style of contest, are broken out because there's so many of them. And some people, that's what they like to go after. But we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to look at an 8-day calendar just for grins, just to start with. And so you'll see here, it's the current date, and it goes out for 8. If you pick a contest, let's say we're interested in this 10-10 contest because it happens to be this coming weekend and we have nothing else to do. So we look at it, and it tells you what the dates and time is. It broadly tells you something about the contest in terms of what the categories are for how much power you could run, for what that information that you have to exchange with the other station is. In this case, it says if you're a member of the 1010 club, then you give your 1010 number and your state or your province that you're in, if you're in Canada, state, or a country if you're a DX station. If you're not a member, you give a 0 instead of the number. And also shows you what the multipliers are, if there are any. And in this contest, there aren't any. And gives you information about where the rules are and how to send your login. Let's try to find something different. Okay, here's a QSO party. And if you look here, you'll see that the exchange is RST and the county that they're in if they are in the state. If they're not in the state, which is Indiana in this case, I guess, then you give the RST and your state or province. And if you're out, you give DX. And you'll see in this contest, you're allowed to work people in each mode on each band separately. So if I worked roll on 40 meters and on 20 meters, I'd get QSO points for both of those bands. In another contest, it might only allow me to work them once. And if I worked them on the second band, that would be a dupe, and that's worth 0 points. So this gives you a thumbnail sketch of the entire contest. And again, tells you where to send the login to and where to find the rules. I was looking for one that had electronic log. Most of them will have electronic logging here. This one here, you'll see you can upload your log online. And that's typical. Having to send it by email has become atypical. So that's the WA7BNM calendar in a nutshell. And I have to go change windows for my sharing again. Didn't realize that, but okay. I think we've done that successfully. So why would you want to get involved in this? Now, I've told you what the contests are about and how you found out about them, but a lot of experienced hams have not tried contests, or maybe they tried them and have developed an aversion, or maybe you've been on the air in a contest that's kind of taken over the band in some of the worldwide contests or some of the more popular contests. It's hard and you have to escape over to a walk band. The walk bands, by the way, are exempted by the contest community for their band. You can't have a contest in a walk band. That's just a gentleman's agreement, but it's a safe refuge if you ever do run into a contest going on that you'd like to get away from. But so some of these experienced people have never tried it or had impressions about contesting that's kept them from doing it. These are some of the reasons people give for not trying a contest. If you're new to ham radio, some of these might apply to you, and I'm going to try to show you why these shouldn't be a reason for you not to at least try it. Looking at the environment that contests are in, you'll find that there are more stations on the air in more places everywhere that the contest is active than at any other time. If you get on a contest, you'll see that people travel to be in places that are maybe a rare or wanted multiplier in that contest, or they go there because it's going to be a great location for a contest. From propagation perspective or from where it is in the world. And there are some places that are really only on during contests. There'll be a de-expedition and they'll be on before and after the contest maybe, but their primary purpose for going was to be in the contest because they will be a very rare multiplier. And if you're a contester and you're a rare multiplier, a lot of people will call you and that means a lot of contacts. So that's a desirable thing when you're in a contest. So the density of signals is higher during contests than at any other time. And dedicated contesters are listening very hard. They go to great trouble to put up specialized receiving antennas just so they can hear you better. And we'll talk a little bit about that and see why that makes any sense. First, even if you're a new licensee, you've learned in your tech class about propagation and that it's essentially bilateral. If all the way from rig to antenna and all the way through, the propagation path is the same both ways. The antennas will work the same and receive and transmit. And let's say you have comparable rigs, all of those things being equal, you can hear each other. You'll be hearing each other exactly the same way. But suppose one of you is running 1,000 watts and the other one's only running 100. It's a little different. The guy that's running 1,000 watts will sound louder to the 100-watt station by 10 dB. That's, again, if all other things are equal, if he's got an equally good receiver, if the noise level in his QTH is the same, all that sort of thing. So imagine that the fellow with a lower power transmitter is listening to the high power station, and that high power station is only a few dB above the noise level. Maybe they're far apart, maybe the band is changing, whatever it is. The high power, or maybe he's got a lot of local noise. The high power station is only a little bit above the noise level. When the 100-watt station transmits, that guy on the other end isn't going to hear him if he's got the same noise level. He's going to be below the noise and he's not going to hear him. He has to somehow make up this 10 dB deficit. And the only way he can do it is by receiving antenna improvement, by making his receive situation better, finding a low noise location if he can, but more importantly and more often, putting up antennas that wouldn't really work well as transmitting antennas, but are designed to have a very high signal to noise. So they can extract signals and boost them up out of the noise. Very often these antennas are lossy. They'd be terrible transmit antennas. But that ratio of signal to noise is improved. And with a bit of amplification, you can hear these other stations you wouldn't normally hear. So contest stations, dedicated contest stations, like DXers, by the way, and there's a lot of commonality between DXing and contesting, put an awful lot of energy into receiving well and putting up receive antennas that take sometimes more real estate than their transmit antennas do. So big ears will be listening for you. This little symbol in the center, this is an alligator. And that's what we call a station that has a big mouth, high power, and can be heard very well, but has little ears and can't hear you. And there's nothing more frustrating than calling an alligator. And for an alligator to know he's being heard, but he can't hear anybody calling him. Another thing about contesting is generally around the clock operation. That means there's always going to be somebody on some band somewhere that wants to make the contact. So the opportunities for making contacts are large in that respect. And finally, and maybe as important as all the rest, is that stations that are in contest are motivated to make a QSO with you. You know, sometimes you tune across the band, you hear somebody's very weak. You're not actually that excited about trying to pull them out of the noise. And you know the conversation's going to be tough and you just move on. That doesn't happen in a contest. Every QSO is important, and the more avid the contester, the bigger the station, the more they want to make a QSO with you no matter where you are. So stations are motivated. All of this stuff adds up to a great chance for you to make a lot of QSOs, and some of them in exotic places that you might not otherwise have a chance to work. So the opportunity to do that helps you out in ways that have nothing to do with the competition or the competitiveness of the contest. You can earn the awards that Roel was talking about before. It is in one or two contests, you can either earn or vastly improve your situation for DXCC, worked all states, worked all zones, whatever it is that you might be interested in doing. You get a chance to check your station performance, and not by listening to some remote receiver or something like that, but being able to be on the air and make contacts with people in different places. You will begin to understand maybe what some of the strengths and weaknesses of your station are, which is always nice to know. You learn about propagation. You can't help, even if you don't study the propagation, if you do several contests or enough of them, you'll start to recognize what parts of the world come in at what times on what bands that you can work. And if you do a little bit of studying, you'll find out some very interesting things about it, about propagation. So that's another aspect of contesting. And your operating skills will improve, absolutely, as you do contest. And we'll talk about that a little bit. As very often you'll want to improve the efficiency of your station, you know, how things work together, how well it operates, how easy it is to operate. I should have said maybe ease of operation, because in a contest, you're doing things over and over and over again that outside of a contest, you might only casually do once or twice, but in a contest, you're doing them over and over. So the easier you can make them for yourself and the better you can make those things perform, the better off you are. Here's a list of things that most contesters have implemented. And every one of these has a positive benefit for you on a normal everyday basis. You may use Vox on phone, but you'll find that in a competitive environment, it doesn't, the settings for the Vox pull in, drop out, and all that may interfere with the way you want to operate. So a foot switch is a great idea. It's a way to hit your PTT with your foot and gives you free hands to do whatever you want with. A headset with a boom microphone on it allows you, first of all, keeps the microphone the right distance from you all the time, so you don't have to worry about that like you would with a desk mic. You can stand up, you can turn your head around, you can stretch, whatever it is you want to do. And the mic is always with you, and the headphones are cutting out noise around you, so it's really good. I used to change into, I only had one antenna in the beginning, then I went to two kind of multi-band antennas. And I switched them literally by pulling the coax off and putting the coax of the other one on. And when you're operating it kind of casually every day, that's okay. You can get away with doing that a few times. But in a contest, that would drive you nuts. So at the very least, you have a manual switch. You might even automate how the switching happens from your radio. I would never have added antennas unless I got involved in contesting. I was a ham. I've been a ham for almost, let's see now, 70 years. Yeah, 69 years, something like that. But I've only been a contester the last 30. And that's when I started to add antennas and do some of these other things that I never would have thought of. So once you've done that, then things are really cool when you're just operating casually. You've got antennas that you know are good in different directions or on different bands. or maybe even on bands you didn't have before, and you're able to switch between them. Really cool once you start implementing these things. Most hams use a computer and internet tools to some extent. Um, Contesters find it pretty invaluable for situation awareness, what's going on in different bands, propagation, all that sort of thing, and for automating their stations, so if they're so inclined. And efficiently rearranging your equipment. There may be something that, like right now, I'm operating with 2 transceivers, but the one that's now become my primary one happens to be on the opposite hand of where I really want it to be. I haven't moved them around yet because the one I want to move is heavy. But, and there's a lot of cables attached to it. But I know it's a pain in the neck. Well, there are things like that, again, if you do them once or twice on a casual basis, not an issue. But if you're doing them all the time, it becomes, or multiple times over a short period of time, they become an irritant. And so being able to fix that makes your daily operation a little better, a lot more fun, less tiring. So all this stuff makes life easier and is often driven by contests because you're making so many QSOs that this little grain of sand is now piled up, and it's the size of a boulder, and it's really bugging you. And so you fix it, and life is really good, and you wonder why you didn't do it before. Contesting, if you persist at it, will improve your operating skills. You can see the little picture on there, and that's pretty much what it is. You've got QRM around you. You've got strong stations on top of you. You got a time pressure because you're trying to make contacts within some limited amount of time. So you learn how to squeeze the most out of your equipment. And everyday challenges, when the contest is over, life is a lot easier. It's like running with weights on your ankles for training, and then when the race comes, you take it. This is kind of opposite. When the race comes, you take the weights off, and now things are really easy. While contesting, you've got the weights on your legs. And then when the contest is over, you take them off, and you really have a ball from a day-to-day operation. So contests will teach you to do these things that I've got listed in the middle of the chart. And signal extraction in harsh environments is probably the biggest one of all those. If you learn that and you learn the timing of your calls, you'll be very successful at breaking pileups. DX stations very often have a lot of people calling them. And if you perfect these skills in contests, then you will find them to be very, very useful when you're trying to work that new DX station or you just want to bust a pileup. So the skills that you develop in contesting carry over and will stand you in great stead, whether you're DX chasing or whatever you're doing. If you're a Morse code operator, your code speed will go up too. And it's kind of a thermometer or a yardstick for you to see, how are you performing as an operator in this environment. Last year, you did this many points or this many QSOs in 2 hours or however much time you want to spend in a contest. You don't have to be there the whole time. You can, look for personal best and see how you're doing. I look back now at what I thought was a monumental number of contacts, and I find that it's really not that tough. And it's not a matter of equipment or antennas or any of that. It's just a matter of, with the same equipment, I could develop a much larger score. So I think we've talked about the category of why, even if you're not interested in competition, you might want to be interested in contesting, whether you're an avid contester or you're just a casual contester. All those things will apply and they'll help you out. Let's look at some of these other reasons. You don't have to spend the entire contest period. If it says 48 hours, you can spend as much or as little as you want. Most hams operate part-time in the longer contests. They don't sit there for the whole contest period. So you adjust your goal. You say, I want to make 50 or 100 or 1,000, some number of contacts, or maybe points. In any case, even if you operate part-time, you don't make a lot of contacts, you can contribute to a club score if your club competes in the club competitions that many of these contests have. So whether Roland is a W3LP superstation and they're contributing millions of points with a high power station and lots of, automation or whatever, and I'm at my 100-watt station with a wire and I'm making a lot less points, they all go into the same bucket when it comes to the club competition. So you're part of that team, and when they win or take a second or whatever it is, you're part of that team effort. And that's a lot of fun. So I always make sure, no matter what the points are that I earn in a contest, I make sure they go to my club. And of course, you can go and work at a multi-op station and just have a time slot where you're operating, and the rest of the time you can either go home or hang out. So there's lots of ways not to spend a lot of time in a contest. Giving the same exchange over and over again, or even with a serial number where it's variable, it's a new exchange, sounds like it's boring. But you have to remember, when you're in the contest, that's how you earn points. And there's got to be some excitement to that, especially if you can see your score and you can see how it climbs. We'll talk about the contest scoreboard a little bit later, if I remember, because I forgot to put it in this presentation. But we'll go click on it and see what that looks like. But there's actually a real-time scoreboard, and if you choose, it's up to you. If you choose to be in that scoreboard, you can have your logger automatically send that information in, and it's kind of nifty to see like your friends or somebody else, or see where you stand with your score, and it's very motivating. I didn't like it at the beginning, but I got to tell you, I'll go in with the goal of making 100 or 200 QSOs, and I'd finish with 1,000. And what happened to me was I got caught up in looking at that stupid scoreboard. Contests can seem a bit intimidating because there's a lot going on, and maybe you don't understand what it is if you haven't looked at it like we're looking at it today. And even so, it can be intimidating because things are happening quickly. But once you know what's going on, it's a lot easier. And I'm going to give you some tips that will actually elevate you to way beyond the bottom of the contester pile. When you get into your first contest, you're already going to have a leg up. Some people think contesters are uncivilized, and I think that's an unfair thing. They're very focused, but they're friendly. And you just need to understand what it is that they're doing, and hopefully by the time we're done here, you will. And again, with a 100-watt station and a wire or whatever you have, you may think that you're not competitive, but the fact is you might be a lot more competitive than you think. The majority of contest stations are 100 watts with a wire. That's what most of the contest people that submit entries in the contests have, and maybe a small beam. The big superstations are not that many. And then there's a bunch of us in the middle that have high power and maybe several antennas. And then I think the vast majority you will find are low power with what I call a grassroots station. And if you're among that, then you're in good company. And keep in mind that there are categories that limit antennas for entry. They limit the power level. So you've always got a chance to be somewhere where you're scoring good points. The trick is to maximize whatever it is you have. I'm on 1/5 of an acre. I used to have a lot of trees, not so many anymore. And I have an understanding wife, which, by the way, is a huge asset. So you look around, you see, are there some trees I can hang another antenna on? Or do I really have something that maybe I can replace with something that would give me a little bit better performance? Or is there ways to make things more efficient in my station so I can make more contacts in a particular given amount of time? And you shouldn't discount, if you look at, let's say, the feed line to your antenna and you think, that skinny stuff that I bought at a bargain at a ham fest some years ago, I've looked it up and I could gain 2 dB if I replaced that with more, a better feed line. Well, don't discount these little things because they add up. And if you find 3 dB somewhere, you've already gotten the effect of doubling your power. So don't discount any of the easy stuff. And certainly that's That's what you ought to go for first. And then start looking at what else you can do. By the way, in this category of easy stuff, you may have a high noise level where you live, but have you ever taken a survey in your house? Have you turned the power off and run your radio off a battery to see if you're the one generating the noise? Much of our local noise in most of our neighborhoods comes from wall warts, from those little power supplies that are stuck in the wall. So you may be your own worst enemy. And if you can drop your noise level down just a few dB, again, you'll be raising your effective power in a way, or in terms of receive, you'll be able to hear more stations. So look at minimizing losses with multiband antennas. Make sure they're tuned as best as you can get them. Good enough is okay for normal operation, but if you want to kind of maximize them for contesting, go out, measure them right at the antenna, as close as the antenna as you can get. Have somebody if you don't have an instrument to do that with, have somebody that does, or contact somebody has one, and tweak what you have. Try to minimize your losses with the antennas. Look to see if you can add one or more antennas. If you can add a direction that you don't have, at right angles to what you have now, that's all that more many contacts that you will make at the margins that you wouldn't have made before. And when you do something like add an antenna, it doesn't have to be perfect. The fact that you're adding it and it has some advantage already gives you a lot more performance. And if you can add a new band, because sometimes multipliers go by band, then and there are QSOs in those bands, then adding a new band is a big deal too. So if you don't have a way to get on 10 meters, or you really can't get on 80 or 160, if you can jury rig some kind of antenna, it doesn't have to be perfect, that works on those bands, you'll immediately get a benefit of more QSOs. And again, you'll have a lot more fun on days when you're not in a contest. Consider monoband antennas. Monoband antennas are the biggest bang for the buck. They're generally simple. You don't have to worry about what happens to them when you use them on another band. So you can optimize them. And there's nothing like a dipoles are phenomenal antennas. They really are very hard to beat a simple dipole. And keep in mind that a fan dipole, that is a dipole that's fed from the same piece of coax, the same feed line, but has multiple diodes connected to it, dipoles connected to it. They're all monobanders, and they all perform like really good dipoles. So don't be afraid to look at something that's you may look at it as a multi-band antenna, but it's really a bunch of separate monobanders, and they perform really well. And if you can, this is what I did when I finally made the jump from just having wires, I added a very small beam. I mean, the length of the boom on my antenna, on my rotatable antenna, is only 12 feet, and the elements are shortened, but it made a world of difference. So if you can add a small spider or a hex or a moxon, and have the ability to turn it and have a little bit of gain there, big advantage. So as you may have gathered from this, antennas are the best place to get better performance. So now that you know the basics about the contests.
Hey, Dan, could we get a quick question in?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, go back a little bit. You talked early on about, I forget if you said alligator stations or crocodile stations, but one of the questions is, how can you, if you're hearing a strong signal, does it automatically make it a crocodile, or is it just somebody in a pileup?
No. If you hear a strong station, the only thing you know for sure is that he's strong. If he can't hear anybody that's calling him, or he's only hearing the loud stations calling him, then he's an alligator. Later on, I will talk about something that Fred, K3ZO, who is a superb operator in all manner of contests and not, and DXing. Fred had this thing he called the rule of twice. Well, for some of us, it's the rule of 3 or maybe 4. But what that rule was is you call somebody 2 times and they don't answer you, move on. Don't waste time. Go back later maybe, but don't waste time. And part of that is because either there's so many stations calling and they're not going to hear you, or the guy's an alligator and you're not strong enough to get through his receive barriers. So, but just because somebody is strong doesn't mean that he's an alligator. Many of the contest stations are remarkably strong, and you're amazed that they can hear you because they have superb receive antennas too. So I don't know. Does that address the question?
I think so. I'll wait for some feedback. So just go ahead, and if there's any follow-up, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, I'll try to find my way back to where we were. Whoa. Guess I went in the wrong direction.
You did.
Okay, so we're getting close. So we talked about station building, and
Go forward.
now you're looking and you're ready to give it a try. So let's talk about not the rules, but the basics of operating. There are two different modes of operation, two very fundamental modes of operation in contests. One is called search and pounce. And in that mode, it's like the way you normally operate during the day, I would presume. You tune around, you hear a station calling CQ, and by the way, you may have some methodology. You start at the bottom of the band and you move up a signal at a time, whatever it is, but you're still calling somebody who's calling CQ. And the advantages of that are when he gives his call sign and he gives his information, even if it's not completely clear, you get many chances to copy it before you even call him if you want. So that's an advantage. And searching and pouncing, you can generate very high rates. You can go from signal to like a bee pollinating. You go from signal to signal to signal to signal if you're good at it. And you can do a lot of these in a short period of time. It also allows you, if you decide you want to chase multipliers because you like it or because there's a rare one out there and you want to work them, you can do that because you're not committed. You're not calling CQ. You're just answering CQs. And you can make good use of what we call spotting assistance that I'm going to talk about very shortly. The shortcoming of search and pounce is you will never talk to the other stations that are doing the same thing you are. Just think about that. If they're searching and pouncing and you're searching and pouncing, you're not going to meet up because you're both just looking for stations calling CQ. It doesn't mean you can't stay very busy and you can't create a big score just searching and pouncing. I've done that and I enjoy it. I get a lot of fun out of it. So search and pounce is a great mode to start with, and you may stick with it for a long time and decide you never want to do anything else. But the other way of operating is called run or CQing. You call CQ, you wait for stations to call you, you give them your exchange, and then you're ready for the next station to call you. And you can get very high rates this way too. If you can stay on that frequency without interference starting to push you off the frequency. And for the most part, if you act like you're a big shot, even if your signal is not huge, most of us can hold a frequency for a while anyway. And it can generate high rates. You will make stations with those guys that are S&Ping. Remember I said you wouldn't make QSOs with S&P stations if you're an S&P station. But if you're a runner, of course, that's who you're going to work. You will also work, by the way, the CQ stations, because there'll come a time when they start looking around to see who they haven't worked. And if you're calling CQ and they haven't worked you, they will call you. But the shortcoming of the run mode, provided enough people will call you, you have to have a decent signal, is you don't get any free shots at missing information. It's not like listening to a guy calling CQ and making contacts and copying the whole exchange before you ever call them. Can't do that. So if you've missed the information, now you have to ask for fills. You have to ask for missing stuff. And that's okay, but that's something you have to do as a runner that you can get ahead of as an S&P station. The other thing is you can't just break off and work a multiplier and then go back to running, because that frequency that you were guarding so well and were using to make those contacts will be almost immediately filled by somebody else wanting to call CQ and has been looking for a clear spot. So working multipliers when you're a runner is a very incidental thing until you become advanced enough to use two radios, or do something equally fancy. So disadvantages of search and pounce are you won't work other search and pounce stations. Disadvantages of the run mode is you can't just willy-nilly go chase a multiplier, and you're going to have to ask for anything you missed because you don't get a pre-look at it the way you do with a CQ station. Well, a good solution is mix them both. Now, I used to run a lot and then S&P to make up for some of the stuff I didn't work. And now I tend to have more fun if I S&P first, and then later on when I kind of run out of stations, then I go to run. And it's easy. You can run out of stations when you're S&Ping because you're going to work all the strong guys first, right? Then you're going to go through and find the second tier. And after that, it's going to be slim pickings. But when you're calling CQ, these S&P stations you didn't hear, strong and weak, are going to call you. So I found that going out and doing S&P and then a little bit of running when things get slow is the way I now operate. And I'm not looking to have the highest score, but I like to put a decent score in. As somebody that's just starting out, you can't beat search and pounds. That's the way to go. So how do you actually make this contest exchange of the required information? What I'm showing you over here is what happens to be the entry window for N1MM, but you will recognize that most logging programs look like that. Only this one is specialized for contests because it has, in this particular contest, 2 places for what I send out and 2 places for what I get back. Now, the stuff I send out may be the same thing all the time, maybe not. And here, of course, is where the call sign goes. So I'm listening for CQ, and I put in that station's call sign. It happens to be Tom's, K3YH. And my program already knows that in this contest, I'm going to send out an exchange that is a signal report of 5.9. Everybody gets a 5.9. Real signal reports don't happen in 99% of the contests. Some people say there's nothing wrong with that. It kind of gives you a rhythm and gets you ready to expect to copy the thing that you don't know. Others think it's silly, but it's become a tradition. So I put in K3YH. The logger says, okay, you're going to send them 595, but I've called him. I listen, and I'm the lucky one. He decides to call back, and I get all the information that Tom sends to me. So I put it in the log. He sent me 5914. I thought I fixed this. That's backwards. Doesn't matter. So that was his exchange. And now I tell him the 595. So the sequence again is he calls CQ. I hear him. I put his call sign in. I say my call sign. He calls me back. He tells me his exchange. I tell him my exchange, and we're done.
We can
now
role play it if you want.
We will. That's in the script.
Okay.
So we've done that, and now the entry sheet goes blank again because he's in the log, and I'm ready for the next station that I want to work, and I tune my dial, and I'm looking for somebody else calling CQ. Yeah, working DX and special event pileups where lots of people are calling is kind of good training, good practice for having to do that in a contest where the strong stations usually get more than one caller. So here's a sample of what it looks like written down on paper, and then Tom and I will talk one out. And we're just going to look at the top line, which is single sideband. So K3NEM is calling CQ. This is what he says. It's important to use phonetics so people know who that is. And a station called G3XX calls him back. K3NEM recognizes the call. He's copied it correctly. And he calls him. Now he says a G3XX. He's telling him this is directed to you. Now they both know who they're talking to. G3XX knows it's K3NEM he called. And now he knows that K3NEM has called him back because he's heard his call sign. So K3NEM gives his call, and then he gives the exchange, which is 5914. This is a contest in which you give a signal report and the zone of the world that you're in. There's 40 CQ zones. So he happens to be in zone 14. And now all he needs is to get the exchange back from K3NEM. I'm sorry, he's already gotten the exchange from K3NEM. So he's done. He tells K3NEM thanks. I'm sorry, he tells G3XX thanks, and he's ready for the next contact. And he indicates that just by using the word contest. He could say QRZ, he could just give his call. So the way it sounds is CQ contest, Kilo 3 November Echo Mike, Golf 3, X-ray, X-ray, Golf 3, X-ray, X-ray, 595, 5914, thanks, K3NEM. That's how it would go. And again, they each know that they're calling each other because they've heard the call sign from the other station. Now, if something goes awry, he'll have to ask for it. If he didn't quite get the 14 or the 5, he'll have to ask for it. But when this is over, everybody's gotten points for a QSO. And if it was a new multiplier, maybe they got that too. So I've done this with roll before. Tom, are you ready to do this? Is that you going to be the guy?
I can, or roll, whichever.
Okay, well, whichever one of you wants to do it, why don't you call CQ and I'll call you back and we'll go through a QSO.
We're going to do a signal report and a serial number.
If you like, or we can do that, a serial number. Okay, good.
You do it, Tom.
Okay. CQ contest, Kilo 3 Yankee Hotel.
Kilo 3 Alpha United.
K3 Alpha United 5917.
59253.
Thanks, K3 Yankee Hotel contest. And I should have said kilo. I should have used a Kilo 3 at the front more appropriately.
It doesn't matter. So now, so now, Tom, call CQ again. We'll have a different exchange this time. The same exchange, but it'll go differently. Go ahead.
Okay. CQ contest, Kilo 3 Yankee Hotel.
Kilo 2 Yankee Whiskey Echo.
Kilo 2 Yankee Whiskey Echo 5919.
Again?
Kilo 2 Yankee Whiskey Echo 5919.
Is that 1919?
Roger, 19.
Thank you. This is Kilo 3 Yankee Whiskey Echo 595.
Thanks, Kilo 3 Yankee Hotel contest.
Okay, so in that case, I didn't get all the information, so I asked him for what it was, and I used the term again. It's very common. I could have said to him, your number. Or if I got part of it, I could have said, one what? Was it one? What's the last number? But it's usually better just to say again, and you'll get it back.
Yeah, when you said again, to me, it was ambiguity, so I just repeated the entire your call and the exchange and the report. But
right.
Yeah,
and we'll get
other reports.
And we'll get to that later.
Say your state, and things like that.
Right. I could have said just the number. Now in this contest, it's pretty obvious. Everybody's getting a 59, so I don't need that again from Tom. He just needs to send me the number. But sometimes it's not obvious what you're missing, so you have to say the specific thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on also, about the right way to ask for the fill. So you build your score. You want to jump in, read the rules. They're published. I showed you where to find them. You know how the scores work. Just remember that you have to have accurate information both ways. Guesswork, none of that stuff works if it's wrong. Not only will you lose the QSO, but ultimately you may be penalized for it. The good news, though, is if you're doing this to add another country to your DXCC, you've still made a QSO with the guy, and your chances are you'll get a QSL out of him. Contesters are very good at that. either entering you into LOTW or sending you a card if that's what you want. So read the rules, get all set up for it, and then begin S&Ping. There should be plenty of that. And chase the multipliers when things slow down a bit, when you start seeing the same stations over and over. Then go looking for more exciting things to do. And if you feel like it, try running a little bit. I mean, you don't have to have a super fast pace, and you understand English. It's not like you have to learn something new. So you can give running a try, especially at the end of the contest. So we mentioned spotting before, and I said you can make the most use of spots if you're an S&P station. So let's talk about what that is. A spot is the information of a call and a frequency associated with that call that's real time, that's on the air. If you associate those two together, that's considered a spot in terms of rules for contesting. And some of these spots come from something called a reverse beacon network, the RBN. The RBN are SDRs all over the world that decode CW and digital signals, and they send it to the RBN. The RBN aggregates all of that stuff and makes it available. And that at stations like yours and mine, you have to have a piece of software that will do that for you, but you leave, and it likely has to be an SDR so that you can tune wide swaths of bands, one or more bands. But there's networks of these all over the world, and spots come in from everywhere. And there's ways to filter them. But RBN takes those spots, aggregates them, and makes them available. Spots can also be entered manually. There are a number of ways to send a spot to the network. You can do it through your logger. You can do it directly on their site. Currently, SSB spots are all manually sent in because there's no reliable SSB voice recorders, decoders that can do that and send that in. At least, even on the digital modes, there's enough mistakes and bad calls that you have to filter them out. So on sideband, it would be horrendous with the current technology, especially in the presence of all this noise and interference that happens naturally. It's kind of easy if you're in a contest or if you have your logger open, because contest loggers anyway can automatically send a spot to the RBN every time you put somebody in a log. You can click off a little box in the software that says send all S&P QSOs to the network, and it'll do that every time you log somebody that you've worked in S&P. It'll send it to the node. The DX spotting network is the other network associated with all these spots. We call it the DX cluster, and it aggregates data from a variety of sources, not just the digital ones, but also the ones where people have reported spots. And so it uses a number of resources and is a bit broader than the RBN, but it's not, it relies on some of those manual sources. So it makes all these different mode spots available. And you can access the RBM or the cluster through a browser or through your Telnet client, or most loggers, even daily loggers, will access the RBN or the cluster, depend on which node that you want to look at. So here's what the RBN looks like. And I got to switch. I think I'm getting good at doing this. I hope. Let's see here. Screen sharing. Share. There we go. Okay, here's the RBN. So here's what the RBN looks like. And it's kind of cool because not only is there a list of stations, we'll look at the list first, that tell you what the station being spotted is, who the one was that heard him. Whoops, it just changed. Okay, what the station being spotted is, who heard him, and then gives you some other statistics, but tells you if it's a digital mode, it'll also tell you what a relative signal noise was at that received location. And all this stuff gets put on a map that you can jockey around. And you can tell exactly what activity is going on. Now here by the color codes, I can see there's a little bit of 40-meter activity across the pond. Most of the activity is on 20 meters. And I can even go and see who that is that's doing the receiving. So this is very cool because you can put in your own, you can actually look for your own call sign when you're sending, and you can see where you're being heard. But this gives you a look at the world. It gives you an idea of where these spots are and who's where. So let's say I was in a contest and the station in India would be a multiplier for me, who just disappeared. Then I would have a place where I could call them. I would know the frequency because it gives me the frequency and the mode that they're in. So that's the RBN in a nutshell. This is the DX cluster. Are you seeing that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a website that looks at the cluster. It's called DX Summit. You can filter. You can set filters so you only see certain things, or you can search for certain call signs. But this sequentially tells you what's going on, and you'll notice it's showing you a station that's on FT8, showing you somebody that's working long path. That means that they're working around the world a long way from this guy's location. Here's somebody that's strong, being heard very strong at N5NM, and happens to be the Austral Islands. So here the spots are just listed in a string. There's no picture, but you can see the frequency and get some comments about what's going on. But this is source information that your logger or your telnet client can access and display to you so that you can find it in a usable form. In fact, you'll be able to click on it in your logger and go directly to that frequency and have that, hopefully be able to hear that station. But
I
all of this
actually
comes.
I actually signed my call while you were doing that, but you just flipped off of it just in time for me not to show up on the RBN screen. But it showed all the places
Yeah,
I was being copied.
are you seeing yourself now?
I can see it on my RBN display. Yeah.
You can? Okay, well I'll just switch back in. That's easy.
See if you can see me.
Since
I'm
you've
on
told me that we're not
20
under, I've been
meters.
talking very fast because I'm used to this being under constrained time, and I know that I tend to run long, but today that wasn't, the roll told me it's not a problem. So I'm going to put in K3RA, and lo and behold, look at all these places roll was heard. Southern tip of Africa, Europe, South America, and here's some statistics about where he was heard and how loud he was. These are very respectable.
How much power were you running?
I had it about 1,000 watts on when I did that.
Yeah,
Let me
I
turn
mean,
that off.
Yeah,
this
show the
over
difference
20
between.
dB stuff, well, you better shift frequency if you're going to do it again. This over 20 dB stuff is fairly strong signal. Look here, this is nice. Oh, this guy was in Costa Rica, so he heard you louder. But he's being heard very well around the world, or in some parts of the world. He's not being heard in Asia right now. I have no idea what.
I'm running
And I can
25
tell
watts now.
a different frequency though, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll look for K3RA again, and we'll see what frequency was it before.
53. I moved to 50. 50.
Okay, so it may take a little while to propagate through the system because the system does some checks. It doesn't want to send out bad spots. So more than one spotting network station has to hear him. They get to vote. Then he gets looked up on a list to say, is that a good call? Has that been blacklisted? Is there something wrong with it? And after all that's happened, which I know in software happens quickly, but after all that's happened, then it finally gets spotted. So now you can see his frequency is different. So this is the low power. And look at this. He's still doing very
No,
well.
that's the same one.
There,
There we go.
No, that's the 5.0. It's the
Yeah, that's the
5.0.
5.0. Yep.
And that's just, of course, I don't think the number of minutes is going to make any difference. That's the 5.0. And he's still being heard in all those places. And, you know, 5 to 10 dB less, but still being heard. These are very respectable signals. Here's a guy, and what does that tell you? It tells you the roll's got good antennas. And
no,
here's a guy
those
in
are the local
Spain.
ones. Those are the ones from 3 minutes ago. He's just got the one.
This is the low power one because he's on 50. He was on 53 before. There's the high power one's 53. So, and you can, if you light up the station, if he's been anywhere else, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to hover on him. If you hover on the right station, let's see that you can. Okay, there's a guy. I'm trying to find somebody that heard him.
The
Okay,
HK0Y at the top there, he heard me in Hungary. I was only running 20 watts.
yeah. I've sometimes done that without turning the amplifier on because it was set for 20 watts. Worked. Somebody gave me a big signal report, and then I discovered I did it with 20 watts. So anyway, that's how this works. You can see your own signal, but it's not the same as somebody making contact with you. But it's an interesting thing to look at. So back to here, and I'm sharing. I think this is me. Is that right? Are you seeing me?
Yep.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, so we went through the summit. So there are rules about using spots in a contest. And essentially the rule affects what class you're in because they're trying to level a playing field. It wouldn't be fair if you were using that kind of information and you were competing with somebody that wasn't. So very often there'll be entry class of spots, which is assisted. And again, it's call and frequency associated. If that happens, then you've got a spot. And it doesn't matter if it's from an outside source like we just looked at, or if you happen to have an SDR in your shack with some software on it that is doing it for you. That's still considered assisted. If you wish to be in the unassisted classes, you can't use any of that information. You can't from an outside source, and you can't use anything from an in-shack source that's broadband. And what that means is if it's decoding more than one signal on it's more than one frequency, then it's considered a broadband. So if I have a decoder on the frequency I'm operating on, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I have a decoder that shows me a whole bunch of stations on different frequencies, that's not okay. That's assistance. So in most contests, you can pick an assisted or unassisted class. In some, they just off the bat tell you everybody can use assistance, or they tell you assistance is not permitted in this contest. There's a few of those. Most of them allow both, and you just have to be when you enter. Sometimes I will start on assisted, and if things are bad, I'll switch to assisted, and it doesn't matter because when I submit my log, that's when I have to make a declaration that I was assisted. So the fact that I didn't use it early in the contest and used it later doesn't matter. As soon as I use it, I've changed my class. So more rules. Spotting is one of the rules. There'll be, even though the contest may be 48 hours or maybe 12 hours, whatever it is, there may be a maximum operating time you're allowed to use. For example, one of my favorite contests, North American QSO Party, it runs for 12 hours, but you're only allowed to operate for 10. And it has a rule that if you want to take off that, if you want time to count as off time, it has to be at least a half hour long. So there's some strategic things you have to think about. Most of the times you won't have that issue because it'll be a 48-hour contest. It might have a 30-hour limit. I don't know about you guys, but I don't do 30 hours anymore. Roll might do that. I'm too old for that. There are power limitations, and they just put you into different classes. Again, with some notable exceptions, like the contest I just talked about, North American QSO Party, no one can run over 100 watts. You're just constrained. So that's a real leveler. But most contests allow you the choice of these three, 100 watts, above 100 watts, or less than 5. QSOs and multipliers, as I've mentioned before, it'll be spelled out in the rules, what you get for them. Are you allowed to work the same guy on different bands and get credit for it? Will you get credit for a multiplier on each band, or will you only get credit for them once? And are there any bonus points for working a member station in the sponsoring club or something like that? It's all in the rules, but you need to look at that just to get some sense of where you're going. Time and power, you absolutely need to look at, because you don't want to violate those or you're wasting your time. And then there's other things I'll call status. If you qualify for the youth credit or the rookie or classic or tri-band wires, that's an overlay. You're still going to have a regular entry in the contest, but they will also separate you out according to these overlay categories and rank you just in the overlay category. So while you might be in the middle of the pack in the overall contest, you may be at the top of the list in rookies, or classic, which means it has some limitations that they'll show you what they are. They have to do with antennas and spotting assistance and so forth. Or are you constrained to just using tri-banders and wires as opposed to people that are much better equipped, in which case you're in another class and you may be much higher in the ranking than you think. So always look at an overlay and see if you qualify, and check it off if you do. And then the rules change a little bit, and we saw that when we looked at that contest. It was a state QSO party, and the rules were the scoring was a little bit different, and the exchange was a little different for people in the state and out of the state. And that may be true for some of these that are sponsored in a certain country. For example, when we do the ARRL DX contest, we give out our state as the exchange, and the foreign station that works us gives his power. So it depends where you are, what your exchange is. All of that's in the rules. Again, this gets nuts. That's a headache for the software guys, and for the sponsor, not your headache. You just look at a little box that tells you what your program thinks the score is. So with that in your mind, let's talk about actual operating tips. What can you do to improve your position in a contest? I'll tell you that if you do these things, excuse me?
Yeah, we got a question before you jump to that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've made it real clear about what the contest exchange was. You and I did a couple of exchanges where we had the report and the serial number. Maybe go back over that. I had a couple of questions, like what was the number you guys were giving each other?
Okay, well, the number that we gave each other, because Tom said serial number contest. So we were giving each other sequential serial numbers. That means my first contact would have been number 1. My second one would be number 2. Third one. So I gave Tom a 5 in the last exchange that we had. So I was just getting started. Tom, on the other hand, gave me, I think in that one, he gave me 19, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So Tom was ahead of me. He'd already made 18 contacts. I was number 19. So those are sequential serial numbers, and that happens in some contests. You're asked to give that out. And the part before that, where we both said 5-9 to each other, is that I'll call it a fake signal report. It's a 59. It's a report everybody gets. It's laughable because when you're digging some guy out of the mud and you have to ask him 5 times to repeat the exchange, ultimately when the call is done, you've each given yourself a 5-9 signal report.
I always tell people it's not a signal report, it's 5-9, and that's what you say before you give the other part.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way you should look at it. That's correct. But in the contest rules, they will say you'll give the other guy an RS report, readability and strength report, and then you'll give him a serial number. They haven't admitted yet that they're just asking you to send 5-9.
And
So it could have,
if you don't send 5.9, you will confuse people.
It'll totally
and
confuse.
if you don't send a 5.9, you're in violation of the rules. So you have to send it. So Tom and I could have been in a contest where we exchange states. So the way that would have sounded would be, I'll call CQ. CQ, this is Kilo 3 Alpha United, calling CQ contest.
Kilo 3 Yankee Hotel.
Kilo 3 Yankee Hotel, 5.9 Mike Delta, Maryland.
5.9 Mike Delta, thanks, good luck.
Thank you, Kilo 3 Alpha United.
Now, there are
Kilo
some
3 Alpha.
contests. There are some contests where you don't use the signal report or quotes signal report, like the VHF contest. There's no 5.9. In field day, there's no 5.9.
Right.
But field day isn't a contest.
There you go. That's true. It's an extra.
Let's not get off on a tangent. So that was the state. That was the state. It could have been a grid square. K3RA. I'm going to call CQ. Let Roll call me back. Hello, CQ. Kilo 3 Alpha United contest.
K3 Romeo Alpha.
K3RA 5919.
5.9.
I'm sorry. 59 Fox. Fox Mike 19.
Yeah, no 5.9. Try it again.
Kilo 3 Alpha. Kilo 3 Radio Alpha. Fox Mike 19.
Roger, Fox Mike 19.
Thanks. So we both gave each other FM 19 because in this contest you'd give grid squares. That usually happens in VHF. So again, it's the 5.9 most of the time, and then whatever the contest sponsor has told you is going to be the exchange. The sequential serial number, your location, maybe a country, it may be a state.
Power.
It could be a zone. You have to look up what zone you're in. It could be, if you're European, the amount of power you're running. We don't usually give our power.
If you're running, if you're in a state QSO party, the
County.
the station within the state, for example, let's say it's the Kansas QSO party. The Kansas station will give you his county, but you will give him your state.
Now, the counties, that's not as straightforward. We all recognize, or you'll very quickly come to recognize what the two-letter abbreviations are for the different states. Like, AR is Arkansas, the AK is Alaska. But you'll learn those very quickly. Counties, not so much. So you will either it behooves you to have a list of the counties, or have your logger have a list of the counties, because you're going to get usually it's two or three letters, and sometimes it's both mixed. And if you don't get those accurately, you don't get any credit for the QSO. So whatever is the exchange, you need to get that written down properly.
Yeah,
sometimes it's easy.
County name, and you got to figure out what the abbreviation is.
Right. Now, in some contests, it's a gimme. In the CQ Worldwide, pretty much if you know the country the guy's in, you know his own. So that's not a big mystery. But with the counties, and people move county, they also move counties sometimes in the same contest.
Right.
So it gets complicated. The bottom line of all that is you have to log what you hear. But it's the whatever is prescribed by the contest sponsor, that's the exchange.
I think we ought to clarify, because we have some beginners here. The statement about field day not being a contest was kind of an inside joke. For all intents and purposes, field day is a contest just like all these others. So all the things he just said about all these other contests applies to field day as well.
That's true.
Here's another question, and we talked about multipliers, but go through this again. So here's somebody said, I was in a contest and I gave Nebraska as my state, and the other station said, oh good, a multiplier for me. Can you explain that?
Sure. In the contest that he was in, the multipliers are states. So every time he works a new state, the first time he works that state, he gets a multiplier. He hadn't worked a Nebraska station yet. So when you worked him, he was very happy because he gets to use you as a multiplier against his score. And if it had been a contest where he gets a multiplier for a new state on each band, he might have actually asked you to move to another band and work them again. That's okay. That's the thing you can do. But in most of these contests like that, once you work that state, it doesn't matter what band, you've got credit for the state. You don't get to use that multiplier again.
So just to,
that's
just
the
to
whole.
remind people that what you mean by a multiplier is back in the beginning when you showed that how you score, if you work 100 stations in 10 different multipliers, then you multiply 10 times 100, and maybe there's another number that gets in there, but don't worry about it. But you can see that your score is 10 times higher because you work 10 multipliers. If you work 50 multipliers, then your score is 50 times higher with the same number of contacts. So multipliers are very important to your score, and the people who are serious in the contest are looking to get all the multipliers they can.
Just remember that a multiplier is only worth the number of QSOs you've made. So if all you do is chase multipliers, you're missing out on a lot because you got to take the multipliers against something. And if all there is the contacts that you made as multipliers, you're not going to get a very big score. But if you've made, 1,000 contacts, now every multiplier is worth 1,000. So it's a balance. You don't want to go nuts in one way or the other way. But it's always a good thing. Multiply should always make you smile because now your score has been multiplied.
Here's another question about CW speed. So what do you suggest my CW speed should be in order to be in a CW contest?
Well, let's talk about that when we get to that.
Okay, good.
Okay. So the prime directive in a contest, and maybe you've been beaten over the head with it enough so far, is that there's no partial credit. You got to get the call sign and exchange absolutely correct. And so verify whatever it is that you heard or think you heard or got clarified. That's what goes in your log. Log what you hear. You may see a spot and it can be the wrong thing. It's not unusual to have the wrong call sign sent out, especially, well, in CW contests, it happens both by people making mistakes and manually putting in the wrong thing, or by the decoding in the RBN due to some anomaly in the way the guy is decoding it incorrectly. Or in sideband in particular, since those are all manually entered, people misunderstanding the call, and you'll get lookalike calls showing up. So log what you hear. Beware of what we call busted spots. Those are spots that are not right. They're like broken links. They're not correct. And just because they're in a database and just because they showed up in a spot, that's not the Bible. What the Bible is what you heard in your ear. When God speaks to you, that's what you write down, not what somebody else wrote in a book somewhere. So log what you hear. That's the golden rule. To what Roll said, you really want to maximize your score. You want to get both multipliers and QSOs, but your multipliers are going to be less in most contests, aside from WPX. In most contests, there will be far fewer multipliers than there are contacts that you can make. So you want to make sure you make a lot of contacts so those multipliers are really turbocharging a big score. And as you work and make those contacts, multipliers will come your way naturally. The outlandish ones you may have to go chase, but a large number of those multipliers just happen naturally as you make QSOs. So your objective ought to be to keep your rate as high as you can make it. And that means the number of contacts you make per unit time. We measure it in QSOs per hour, but it really just means contacts divided by time. And the way to do that is to minimize the time that you spend in the contact and the time between them. There's no use in having a really brief contact and then this long period of time until your next QSO. Well, what you want to do is you want to make the contact quickly and scurry to your next one and make that one quickly and scurry to the next one and keep doing that. And that way you'll have the best rate that you can manage. In order to do that, you need to avoid chattiness. you need to have this, what I call a friendly sense of urgency. Please copy my thank you for, and repeating whatever the guy sent you. If I'd have said to Tom, please copy my number 15, and he says, oh, thank you for your number 15. My number to you is, well, we could have had 3 contacts in the time it took to say all that stuff. So you're not doing anybody a service by saying that, and they understand you're not being impolite. This is just a contest expediency. So this superfluous stuff just wastes time. But please copy my and thank you for are the famous ones. You will hear people doing it. Don't emulate that. It's not a good idea. Sure, it's okay to be friendly. And instead of saying Roger, most of us say thanks when somebody has given you a exchange and you understand it. You say thanks. This is K3AU contest. So you can be friendly and still not waste a lot of time with words that you don't need to send. When there's a missing letter or word in the exchange, and somebody says to you, give me the last number, or let's say we're in a contest where there's 2 pieces to it. You give him a serial number and you give him your state. So he says to you the state, repeat again the state, and then I say 59, number 65, Maryland. And he says, the state again, number 5959, Maryland. The problem with doing that is, first of all, it takes a lot more time than just saying Maryland or Mike Delta. But there's a reason he didn't hear all of that exchange, whether it was interference, propagation, whatever it was. So by sending him 3 pieces of information, only one of which he needs, I'm now cutting his chances of getting the right information in 1/3. You know, maybe the time that I send the 2 pieces that he already has is the only time the signal is clear and the interference comes in on the last part, or the signal drops out. So when somebody says to you, I just need your number, I just need your name, whatever it is they're asking for, only give them that. Don't repeat the whole exchange. Just give them the part he's missing. And it's okay to give it to him 2 or 3 times. That's great. But at least you're maximizing the chance he's going to get it right instead of sending him stuff he already knows.
Especially his call sign. That's my pet peeve. When you give the guy back his call sign. Ah!
Yeah, well, some people do that out of habit.
I guess.
And this works both ways. So when you miss something, you know, if it's a simple exchange like 59 something, you can just say again, and either they're smart enough to just give you the something part or they give it all to you. But if it's a complex exchange that has more than one part to it, then you absolutely want to ask for what you're missing. And by the way, this is a good thing to do with call signs too. Somebody sends you a call and you're missing just the last letter. There's nothing wrong with saying, send me the last letter of your call. Give me the last letter of your call again 3 times, you know, or just give me the last letter of your call. Because if he goes KB3, AB, and he does that 4 times, you still only know KB3 something. Whereas if you've told him you just need the suffix or you just need the back part of his call, you'll get that. So ask for what you need and give only what's asked for. If somebody just says again to you, you have no choice. You just have to send them all the stuff you might have missed. You don't have to send the 59 again, but you should send them everything else. Here's that rule of what was the rule of twice for K3ZO, but you know, Fred always had a rock crushing signal. I sometimes decide that 3 or 4 times is enough for me. But the important thing is pick a number, no matter if it's 3, 4, 5 times, and then stick to it. Don't get caught up calling the same station or trying to pull through the same station over and over and over past this limit, because 2 things will happen. One is you'll be wasting a lot of time, so your rate's going to go to pot. The other part is stations that were waiting to call you, if you were calling CQ, stations that were waiting to call you will get bored and they'll move on because you're wasting their time. So if you call somebody 2 or 3 times, it doesn't work, or 4 times, whatever your number is, move on. If you're calling CQ and they call you and you can't get them in 2, 3, 4 times, move on. Don't pick a number and then stick with it as your limit. Don't get caught up when you chase multipliers. It's okay to go chase a multiplier, but don't fall in love with that guy. And meanwhile, you could have been making QSOs and building up the QSO points, the ones you're going to multiply the multipliers against. You could have been building those up, but instead you're spending all your time chasing this one guy. So if you're not going to get a whole lot of points for that multiplier, you're better off saying, all right, 5 minutes is enough, or 3 minutes, that's it. I'm not spending any more time on this. I'm going back to making QSOs.
Unless it's a new country for you, then you might.
Well, again, yeah, well, if you're doing this for rewards, absolutely. So you got to moderate with, you're there to have fun and make DX contacts. You're there to make a score. All that stuff should be playing in your head. But strictly from a numerical perspective, it's cut and dry. If I could have made 10 contacts in the time, and it takes me 5 times that period of time to make the multiplier, it may not be worth it. Anyway, just don't get caught up to where you look at, it's like going down a rabbit hole on the internet. You watch this one YouTube video and then you watch another. Pretty soon you forgot what you were there for. So just don't let it become something that's obsessive unless it's a new country for you or something that you're chasing anyway. Multipliers will happen when you make QSOs. So ultimately, you'll be just chasing the ones that didn't call you or that you didn't call when you made your QSOs. Sometime during the contest, try running so that you can work the other S&P stations. Undoubtedly, you will find some stations that you haven't heard. And if you do it late in the contest, you will be fresh meat because even the big guys might not have worked you and they'll call you. So if you want to be attractive, but you still don't want to spend a lot of time running, save it for, late in the contest when people are desperate for contacts. You'll be much better off. On single, so those are all general tips for contests. In sideband, you want to use unconventional. You don't want to use unconventional phonetics. Use either the standard phonetic international alphabet that we've all known, or to use well-established alternatives. Names of cities and countries come to mind, and there's a few others that are used. Radio America is perfectly good. You don't have to say Romeo Alpha. Most of them are multiple syllables, which is what makes phonetics work. But don't make up some cute phonetic and think that's going to work in a contest because it'll get very confusing. If you're going to be S&Ping and you hear the guy giving an exchange to the station that he's working before you, nothing wrong with pre-filling that in if you can, whether, and if it's a serial number, you have to be smart enough to know your number is going to be one more than the last guy who worked. If you can't understand what's being sent to you, just because he's a loud station and he's talking fast, doesn't mean you can't ask him for a fill. So if you don't have it, the QSO is not going to be worth anything to you unless you have it right. Keep asking to get the information until you get it all. And you can say, again, the number, or again, your state, or just again. And then finally, when you get it all, you say thanks, give your call sign, you're done, or just thanks, or Roger, or QSL, whatever you like is appropriate. Call with confidence. If you're in a pileup, it's like you're trying to elbow you're in a bargain basement and there's a bin with all the stuff that's for sale and you got to elbow your way through everybody else going for that item that's on sale. So you got to act like even if you're not a big dog, you got to kind of act like it. Be bold, get in there, call strong, and try to use timing to your advantage. Very often there's this large mass of callers and then there's silence for just a moment. And what you want to do is be the guy that calls during that momentary silence. You don't want to wait so long that he's picked somebody else out of the mess, but you want to wait just long enough that you get in on the tail end of that noise. So just experiment with how long that is. You're talking about seconds and fractions of a second here, not long periods of time. But try to use timing to your advantage because on single sideband, there's no other way to distinguish yourself. You can't change your CW pitch. You can't move off frequency too much. They won't understand you. You'll sound funny. So try to get stay on frequency, but try to use timing as your advantage. And remember that friendly sense of urgency. Here is a, let me get it up first. For some reason, this link was hard for me to do. And there's an advertisement in the beginning, so we're not missing anything here. So let me go change my share again. Sharing. Here we go. Pick that. Sorry for the ad.
Water pressure by 15 times.
Isn't that amazing? But wait, there's more. Okay. This is a guy that has a very big signal, and he's a good contest operator. So
Charlie Echo 59 Mike Echo. Thank you, Whiskey 2 Radio Echo. Radio 7 Norway Whiskey 59 Mike Echo.
So he's giving his state as an exchange. Mike Echo, he's in Maine.
Whiskey 2 Radio Echo contest. Whiskey 2 contest. Whiskey 2 Radio Echo. Thank you, the pilot.
So you can see how efficient that was. He gives his call sign. That's all he needs to do, as long as the station's waiting to work him. When he didn't get a response, he lengthened that a little bit and said contest, to make sure that somebody tuning by knows he's in the contest and wants to solicit them. That didn't work. So then he said CQ 32RE contest. He lengthened it out and threw the CQ in there, which is exactly the way I do it, progressively. He doesn't want to spend any more time calling CQ than he has to. So he uses the shortest and then makes it a little longer until somebody calls him. But you notice in every contact that he made, got the exchange, and then it was his call sign and thank you, and that was it. Let's see. I think he gets a fill in here somewhere.
50 Mobile again. Mike 0 Papa Lima X-ray Mobile 59 Mike Echo. Thank you, Whiskey 2 Radio Echo. Whiskey 2 Radio Echo contest.
Now he's very fast. The rate here is like over 200 QSOs per hour.
Legally 2 Sugar 59 Mike Echo. 59500. Thank you, Whiskey 2 Radio Echo.
And the response he's getting, this is ARRLDX. So what he's getting in response is the amount of power that the other station is running.
59 Mike Echo.
So his exchange is state, their exchange is power.
One X-ray Charlie 59 Mike Echo. Thank you, Whiskey 2 Radio Echo. Oscar November 3 Alpha Romeo 59 Mike Echo. Thank you, Whiskey 2 Radio Echo.
So you'll notice that he doesn't always use the same phonetics the other station used, and you don't have to. In fact, very often, I don't use the phonetics at all because the guy's going to recognize his own call. So Roll may call me with Kilo 3 Romeo Alpha, but I'll just say K3RA. I don't have to go through the phonetics, or I may use different phonetics that I'm comfortable with. Doesn't matter as long as the other station understands you. So that's W2RE running them, as they say. And now this is Dan trying to figure out the sharing again. I know how to do this. There we go. I got this down. Okay. So, oops. So on CW, now let's talk about code speed. Trying to get rid of this thing here. Okay. On CW, you shouldn't let speed keep you from enjoying the contest. So it's very simple. You tune around, and if there are high speeds, you don't call back. You find a speed that you can copy the call sign in the exchange, if you're S&Ping now. And if you have to look for slower stations, this isn't as true as it used to be, because you'll still find high-speed stations all over the band. But the slower stations, just by convention, generally are up band. The beauty of S&Ping is you can listen several times and get the call in bits and pieces. and you can listen several times and get the exchange before you ever call them. But it's if you're S&Ping, you just find the ones you're comfortable copying. And remember, if you've gone to that station because there was a spot for them, make sure you can hear and you can copy the code well enough to know whether that's actually the call or whether he's been misspotted. It's a busted call. So again, make sure you can hear that. When you call, try to separate yourself from the crowd that's calling if it's a pileup. You know, you're calling and you're not being heard, then move your frequency a little bit. Now, sometimes their bandwidths are really narrow and you may be off just far enough that you're out of bandwidth. But sometimes it's because everybody mouse clicked on the same spot on their logging program, and it's put them all on the same frequency, and he can't decode any of them. So if you move off a little bit, he's going to hear you. Now, there's options you can set in the programs that'll randomize how far off you are and all that stuff. But my advice is, if you're not being heard, play around with the frequency a little bit and see if that will help on CW. And again, just like on phone, time your call. You may want to wait half a second or whatever it is to try to fill into a gap where nobody's sending. In terms of the speed, sometimes, you know, if you're listening to a CQ station, he's sending very fast, you can't quite make it out. And clearly nobody's answering him. So either he's an alligator or he's run dry. He's one of the big guys. It's on Sunday afternoon. He's worked everybody. If you ask him QRS, very often they'll slow down for you. It's not fair to ask them that in the middle of a high-speed run, but it is fair to ask them that when nobody's answering them. If you're calling CQ and you've picked a speed, and you should pick a speed that you have very high confidence you can copy on the way back on the first time. You don't want to ask for repeats when you're calling CQ. And somebody calls you at some insane speed or something that's much higher than you, you can choose to ignore it, in which case he'll call you 2 or 3 times and then go away and won't call you again because they don't want to waste time. Or you just say QRS, and if they've got any brains and they want the contact, they'll slow down and make the contact. I generally will slow down. If somebody calls me very, very much slower than I'm calling CQ, I'll slow down automatically to work them, unless I know the call sign and I know that person isn't doing it because he can't copy fast. He's doing it for some other reason. Maybe he wants to get through the pileup that's calling me, and running slow is what he wants to do. In terms of your own CQ speed, you know, speeds under 25 are very unusual, but they work. Again, you should use whatever speed you're comfortable sending. If you're going to send slowly, you'll probably have an easier time anyway finding the spot up the band, but you should be a little bit higher in the band, and that way people that are looking for the slower stations will also look for you up there. And there's less chance of being interfered with, which means the RBN will pick you up and send your call sign out. I did an experiment and for a while back. By the way, every year the speeds go up higher and higher. But you know, 10 years ago I did an experiment and I found that 28 was just a good speed because it was fast enough to keep a decent rate going, but it wasn't so slow that it would kill my rate. Most people could at least copy the call sign in the exchange at that speed. So it seemed to work very well. Between 25 and 28 seemed to be a sweet spot. Now, it's probably 30. Good Lord, some people are, you know, much higher than that. But if that question was about what speed should you be sending CQ at, my answer would be the speed that you're comfortable that you can copy the first time the call sign and the first time the exchange. And if you can copy much higher than that, you just want to try to pick what the speed is right. I would say, you know, start out with 28 and see how that works, and then creep your way up or down depending on how it's working for you. Tom, you want to see if that answered the question?
Yeah, I'm watching to see. Yeah, that is. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm curious. Was that somebody that doesn't have problem copying? You just wanted to know what an optimum speed was, or somebody that was just wanted an idea of what speed he should be using?
Bill, go ahead and tell us what your,
What did you have in mind when you asked that question?
just wanted to see when he could get into a CW contest. So I think you've
Oh,
answered the question.
yeah.
If you're a little bit slower than average, wait until Sunday and get on the higher part of the band.
Yeah, if you want to call CQ, if you're just you want to know about what your capability of copying should be before you try a contest, I would say just go into a contest, set up your log and everything and go into a contest and find stations that you can copy. And even if you have to listen to them 3, 4, 5 times to get the information, if they're calling CQ and they're sending it, you'll be able to figure out what he's going to send you. And then you can send it to him. And if you send it to him more slowly than he's sending it to you, it doesn't matter. As
Doesn't matter.
long as you can copy it, that works. So
Okay.
thanks for that
Bill
question.
says, thank you very much.
Okie doke. Digital contests. You got to be careful when you're setting up for either RTTY or FTA or whatever digital mode you're going to use. Those are the two most popular digital contesting modes. This isn't like you got the audio gain set wrong on phone contest and you could have more power or something like that. These decoding digital messages depends on precision. So you have to spend a little time doing things correctly. On radio, I like RTTY. I never thought I'd say that, but I like it because it's a combination of hands-on tuning and getting things right, and a little bit of decoding, the magic of letters showing up on your screen and decoding. I think it's a very cool mode. If you're going to try radio teletype, which is what RTTY stands for, then I strongly suggest going to AA5U's website. I'm not going to do it here, although this is a link. Because there's great guidance on setting up and using it and about what RTTY contests are about. If you have things set up and you think everything's right and you're decoding other stations, but they're not coming back to you, like you call them and then there's this gap and you think maybe they're decoding you and then they call CQ again. Make sure that you're aligned with them. Now this picture here, this is a display of something called MMTTY, which is probably the most popular RTTY decoder. And this is a waterfall and a spectrum display right here. And the way RTTY works is there's two tones. That's what these two frequencies are. And it jiggles between them depending on, and makes different patterns. And those patterns are whatever the letter happens to be. This Lizard pattern over here with the two ovals at right angles is also an indicator that you tune correctly. So when you have the two frequencies lined up with these lines, or this thing as a beautiful cross representation that way, you're tuned in properly. So that needs to happen. If you're not being heard, make sure that you're set up to be transmitting on the same frequency. The other thing is, one of these is called a mark and the other is space. And as you might imagine, if they're backwards, you're going to get gibberish. You may be reversed. It's very easy to, when you're setting up RTTY, and if you read about it, you'll see why, to get those two flipped over. And as it happens, MMTTY and almost every other RTTY program has a button that says reverse for that reason. So if you find that you're decoding the other guy and he's not hearing you, or you can't decode anybody, click on the reverse and see if that fixes it. So those are the two things. Make sure you're accurately aligned and that you're confirm that you're not in a reverse condition. The other thing to keep in mind in RTTY, this is important in all contest exchanges, but especially so in RTTY, is don't delay when you're sending your call or an exchange. As soon as the other guy stops sending, send your response, whether it's your call sign or whether it's an exchange, because if they don't hear you for some period of time, it's usually a very short period of time, they're going to start sending again. And you may be crossing paths over and over again. This is a self-perpetuating problem that you create when you do that. So if you waited too long once, make sure you nail it on the next time so that everything works out neatly. I love RTTY. I think it's a very cool mode. It's a combination of the computer doing something for you, which, by the way, in the old days we had analog decoders that did this, and mechanical teletypewriters that pounded out the letters, and actually manually doing some tuning in order to hear the station. Digital, and when I think of digital contesting, I really think of FT8 and FT4. Look at last year, K9WX gave a very nice presentation, and there's a link to it here and at CTU. And while we're at it, why don't we just click on this just to show you what Contest University is like. So let me get to the share button, and here we are. So
How are you doing for time?
are we under time constraint now?
Well, no, but I have about an hour presentation.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I kind of started to slow down because I thought that wasn't an issue. Okay. Well, anyway, look through this. It's a good presentation, and I'm going to give you a link to this Contest University site where you'll find a whole lot of other useful information about contesting and tips on operating. So let's see, share. I want to share this guy again. Sorry, Roll. I kind of slowed things down because of that.
That's
So
okay.
anyway, take a look at that. Look at Joe Taylor's site and the WSJT site as well. Make sure you've got the correct mode. Some contests are FT8, some are 4. I don't know of any that are 2, but maybe they're both. I don't know. On VHF, there's a mode called contest mode. Be sure that you look in the rules and see if that's called for if you're in a 6-meter contest or VHF contest. And be sure that the correct settings are in the computer for the contest that you're in. There are alternate F function key bindings for contesting in FT8. They're not the same exchanges that you send normally if you're an FT8 user. And of course, you know this, if you use FT8, that your time has to be correct or the whole automation doesn't work. So I like to use this utility called time.is. It's great. I was going to show you how it works, but I don't think I need to. You can do that on your own. When you operate in a contest, probably not in a contest as well, move your transmit frequency tactically. Pick a frequency that looks like it's clear at your end anyway, and freeze your transmit on that frequency. Lock it. And then you can use the RBN or a similar node. You can just look it up on the internet, called PSK Reporter, that both of those will record FT8. Put your call sign in, and you will see the places you're being heard. If you're not seeing your call sign, the chances are there is a strong station on your frequency that you're not seeing during the receive cycle. So move to another spot and try it again. If you do see yourself showing up, that's great. Then just leave it where it is until things get tough, and then you may have to do it again. But move your frequency and then to someplace clear and freeze it is the best tip I can give you on FT8. Everything else is pretty much automated. There is one question, and that is, when is your QSO done? It's definitely not when you see 73. That's really not required in a contest. But what actually constitutes a complete QSO is kind of up in the air. There's lots of discussion on the internet. So check the rules if there's guidance. Also look for online discussions. It is the computers do the cross-log checking for all these contests, and the highest not in the log NIL rates. When you get a report back and it said you had 20 NIL, those highest rates of all the contests come out in the FT8 contests or FT4 because of the ambiguity about when a contact has actually been completed. So because of that, try to get as much guidance as you can before you jump in, so you'll know when to count something as a contact and move on. So here's some things you ought to think about if you're going to be messing around with contests. These are the kind of a recap. Consider improvements in your station, especially in antennas. We've beaten this friendly business to the we've beaten the sense of urgency thing to death, but keep in mind S&P is the easiest mode, but CQing will make you be able to work stations you couldn't work the other way. Try to keep your rate up. Ask only for what you needed and jump in. That's pretty much it. And in contests, you're going to have a choice of what classes to enter. Some of them you can see, intuitively, you'll notice I can change this during the contest. Maybe I intended to go unassisted, but then later on I turned on the RBN and decided to go assisted. That's fine. You just declare you were assisted. You can never go up in power. You can't go back down. So if you decide to go low power, then go high power, then you're a high power guy. Sometimes you find yourself doing really great on one band and not so great on the others. You can make that decision at the end of the contest and enter in one band only. So some of these things you can decide later, some you have to decide in the beginning of the contest. But the most popular combination is over here on this blackboard. All band, side band, single transmitter, single operator assisted. That's a popular one. And there are things called overlays. See if you qualify for them. A youth overlay, being under a certain age, a rookie having a minimum amount of experience that's laid out in the rules. Classic will be spelled out for you, usually is a non-assisted low power wire, something like that. And then if your antenna system is just wires or wires and a single tri-band beam, then you can put the tri-band or wires overlay in. And what it means is you're scored with everybody else normally, but you're also scored in a separate group with this overlay where you may be much higher in the group than you would be in the overall group. So it's always good to see if you qualify for an overlay and grab it. Here's logs. What are you going to do about a log? You can do any of these things, but the smart thing to do is submit the log. It doesn't, the information is there. It's generally a painless thing to do. You will have to generate a Cabrillo formatted log. All contest programs do that for you automatically. And some of the programs that have contest provisions in them, like N3FJP, it's not a contest logger, but you can buy contest modules. That will also do Cabrillo files for you. So I strongly recommend you do that. Daily loggers will work. And there's no reason to go out right away and grab a contest logger, but contest loggers have features that you don't find in daily logging programs. So you really would like to use a dedicated contest logger, and you can always transfer information because the contest loggers will create ADIF files, and ADIF files can be imported into your daily loggers. So you won't lose anything by doing that. Contest logging programs have usually all the logging functions that a daily logger has. What they won't have is award tracking and award chasing kind of stuff. But they have a lot more that is useful in the contest. And so if you're serious about it, you want to get a contest logger. As a rule, they will all have at least these features here.
Yeah, I'm going to, just to clarify, I'm making a presentation on logs. I will touch a little bit on contest logging, but not much. But I will talk a lot about what everyday loggers do.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk about everyday loggers at all, other than the grayed out areas of something that everyday loggers will do. But this other stuff that's written in black are things that most daily loggers don't do for you. And, like the serial numbers we talked about, Tom and I were exchanging, it will do all that sequencing for you and keep track of it and so forth. It will help you figure out partial calls. It will go back if you want and look at what did this guy send the last time he was on the air. Of course, he may have moved. He may be using more power now than he used before. All that stuff can change. These are all just aids. They're not the Bible. The Bible is what you hear in your ear. That's what you write down, not what you see on the form, even if it's pre-filled for you. So all this will happen in any logger, in any contest logger. This is a list of contest loggers that run under Windows, except this last guy. He's the outlier. He's the Mac one. Skookum Logger is the most powerful of the contest loggers that are written, probably the only really dedicated contest logger on the Mac. There's another one called Rumlog, but it's really an award-chasing daily logger. It's not so much a great contest logger, although I know contesters that use it. N1MM is by far the most popular of all of them. The features that I think are the most useful in a contest logger is a band map, which is a representation of I'll show you what it looks like, but it's a representation of the stations that are on the band as if they were on a dial or a tape. SuperCheck Partial, which is a database of all call sign of known contesters. And SuperCheck Partial looks at that and says, if you put in a piece of a call, what could the whole call be? Or if you put in a call, it tells you where you might have one letter wrong or something. It could be one of these other calls. So it helps you, but again, it's what you hear that counts. So all this will do is help cue your ear if you're not getting it right. And the available cues and mulch window, which is an N1MM thing, which I think is fabulous because it tells you per band what the number of stations you've worked and not worked, number of QSOs you haven't had that are available, that are being spotted, and the number of multipliers that are available and being spotted that you have not yet worked. So right away, it helps you make decisions about changing bands. I use this on a daily basis to see what bands are open. Since should I do the live demo or not? Roll.
Can you do it in 5 minutes?
Yeah. Okay. So I won't show it to you here. I'll do it. I'll demo. So we're gonna just switch to or maybe I don't have to switch. Let's see here. I'll minimize this. Oh, okay. It was looking at a window. So now I want to share the screen. So I go to sharing, entire screen. Okay. Entire screen. And for some reason.
There you go.
Okay. Are you seeing my screen with all this stuff on it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is N1MM. There are parts of it that are on the other monitor, but right now this is a very useful part. This is the thing I call the band map. And you will see there are stations shown here on the band map. They were a result of spots coming through from the cluster. And so you'll see the frequency they're on, and N1MM will put a heading in case you have a beam and you want to turn it, which you can do automatically or by hand. And if I click on this guy here, you notice he's on 1410. If I click on him, he's now ready to put in my log. And I just have to push my space bar. He's in the log, and I'm on that frequency. And my transceiver, which you can't see, has also clicked itself. The transceiver is now following whatever's going on here. And it goes both ways. If I turn the dial on a transceiver, you notice the pointer on the left in the band map is moving. It's because I'm tuning my radio. But I can just click on a spot. There I am. I can click on a spot that's in this window here, which is the available cues and mults. It's showing me the bands, the cues and mults I don't have on those bands. And I can click on one of those. I don't want to. And again, he shows up here in my entry window. And I can hit the space bar. And it's pre-filled my exchange. Now, this is my daily log. So there isn't any particular thing that I'm going to exchange here. But this is how it would work. And over here on the upper right-hand side is my log. And if I put in, let's say I put in VP2VI, and I hit the space bar, first thing it tells me is I've worked this guy on this band before. So he's a dupe, and I won't get any credit for working him. But it also shows me in my logger, on my logging window over on the right side, the bands that I've worked him on and the modes I've worked him in. You can see I've worked him on a couple of times on phone on different bands on CW. So this is useful information in a contest, because if you need a guy in another band, sometimes you can ask them. But the important thing is it's telling me the dupe, it's showing me the band map, it's showing me the activity and the Qs and mults. If I'm interested in my rate, and you should be, there's a window over on the right-hand side here with the green bars. It will keep track of how many QSOs per minute on the average you're making over some short time period. So you have some gauge of, when things start to go south and that rate starts to drop, you may want to change bands, or you may want to switch from S&P to run, or vice versa. You might want to do something different, because if you just sit there, the rate's going to keep going down and down. Up in the middle top here is a window from the RBN, from the cluster, and it's showing me spots as they come through. And you can see there's a frequency, then there's a call sign, and there's a time, and there may be some other notes that somebody put in. And actually, if I haven't worked them, I can do those, and also it will click over. So that's what the basic logger looks like. Now let me put in a call sign and show you what this window in the middle with HI1, HI8D looks like. If I put in W3L in here as a partial call, it shows me, and I'm going to expand this so we can see more of it. It shows me all the calls that have that pattern in them, the W3L pattern, and some that almost have it, like W3IL. So that if I'm listening to a guy and I can't quite get it, it will help, because if I know what I'm listening for, I can say, oh, that's a P. Now I get it. It's not a T, it's a P. There's a good chance, because he's in his contester database, it is a P instead of a T. But here we go, W3L. I'm going to put a P in there. Now that list has gotten smaller of possibilities. And W3LP, and the reason this is in big letters up there, it's telling me, hey, that's a valid contester call. You might be listening to W3LP. Only I know I'm hearing another letter and I don't know what it is. And it's telling me it's probably LPL, because everybody else is something different. And I put in LPL, and lo and behold, LPL shows up here as a valid call sign from a contester. It also tells me I've worked him before. So this helps you listen for what you think, helps you try to hear what's going on. K3R, like if it was Rolls call, there's a lot of K3Rs in there. But there's only one K3RA, and there he is. It's gray because I've worked him, but it's a bigger font because it wants to let me know it's a station that that's valid and is in the call sign. The one other thing I'll show you here is I'm going to drag this down because it's in another window. So here we go. So this is the spectrum display, and you can use N1MMs. This particular spectrum display does not belong to N1MM. I like it better, but it's typical of what N1MM does as well. If you want the spots to be in there, you can turn the spots on, and then it shows you the spots. Now, I don't do this in a contest, because the spectrum display would be just chock full of nothing but spots, hard to understand which one belongs to which. I much prefer to use the band map that's over here on the left side that I showed you before for looking at spots. I can change the scale readily. I can do that here too, but it won't get as cluttered up, and it's easier to separate out than on the spectrum display. So my personal preference is not to do that with the spectrum display. I use it to find clear spots to call CQ, or when the band is sparse, I use it to go from station to station instead of just willy-nilly tuning. And all I have to do is click. I can click on it, and my transceiver, as you see now, just went down to this call.
Are you still there?
Looks like he had a seizure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's got to be the end anyway. We're way over. So let's take 5 minutes.